What's up, Meat Geeks? Nick here at Paradise Locker. Today we got an invite down to come down to Lydia's, Kansas City, and sit here with Cody Hogan, the executive chef down here at Lydia's. But we appreciate you having us down and taking some time. We're going to talk today a little bit about how we started working with Lidia and with Lydia's restaurant, how that relationship kind of started, and then Cody is gracious enough to do a little bit of demo on a couple different products that we supply down here and what they do and how they work their magic on those down here in the kitchen. So, Cody, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So it's been we've had quite a long relationship. It's going on 20 years now. Tell us from your point of view kind of how that relationship developed and has evolved over the last close to 20 years.
You know, even from the beginning, it's so much of Lydia's philosophy and the Italian philosophy that you want to use local, fresh products. Before I was here, I was at Chez Panisse in Berkeley, and their focus is so local and super fresh. Everything, is the best products you can best products you can get. And when I came here, the first thing and the easiest thing for me to procure was good produce, because I noticed like the produce coming from the normal purveyors wasn't the best stuff, and so I started going to farmers markets. So we established a network of farms to get good produce. But then the next thing to look for was proteins, and that's much harder to source.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And at the time we were buying produce, excuse me, turn that down a little.
Yep.
We were getting pork from Nyman Ranch in California. And one day we were opening the Nyman Ranch product and noticed that it said grown and produced in Missouri. And we thought, well, that seems very strange because we're getting this from California, and it's making all this big trip that it really shouldn't have to make.
Right.
And then I'm a little fuzzy on how the exact connection happened. It was with Heritage Foods USA, with Patrick Martins, got connected with Lidia, I think somehow in New York. And then you guys, they pulled you into the picture. You could probably clarify that some more.
Yeah, so it was circa 2004. We got a phone call from a farmer in Kansas that said, hey, I have a gentleman in New York that wants to purchase 10 Berkshire hogs, wants to process them under USDA. At that time, we were still only state inspection. We had opened the new plant there in Trimble in the fall of 03, and had opened under state inspection. And so it was pretty soon into 2004 that we got that phone call, and so we went ahead and made the jump to USDA, started getting in some Berkshire hogs, and Patrick had started out as just doing kind of a mail order hog. You could buy a quarter or a half of a hog from Heritage Foods USA via mail order. And if I remember correctly, and Patrick may correct me on this one, if I remember correctly, a chef friend of his had purchased a hog or a quarter of a hog from him for his home use and got it, started trying it out, and was like, why don't I have this pork in my restaurant? Like, this is the best pork I've ever had. And so that kind of jumped them in and started talking about wholesale and getting into some of those, started getting into some restaurant sales. And then I think they had they were able to procure a meeting with Lidia and sit down with the Bastianich restaurant group, and then kind of bore into our relationship starting of us being able to start bringing some proteins down to you guys.
And it's been a perfect match ever since.
Yeah, we've absolutely loved it. We've had numerous trips down here to enjoy meals that you guys have prepared. We've had our family Christmas dinners here, employee dinners here before, and it's definitely it's always one thing, and for our family in specifically, Lydia's from a similar region that my grandparents came from in Italy. So my grandfather was born in Pula, Italy, which was the northeast corner of Italy, kind of the same region. And so
I didn't know that. That's the same town. So
really, really close. And so, growing up and eating Italian food, being in Kansas City, my grandmother's and my grandfather's version of Italian food and everybody else's version of Italian food in Kansas City is a little different. Yeah. And so when we were first introduced to you guys, like, it was really, for us, it was like, this is going to grandma's house and eating food. Like, this is what we remember and what we grew up on. So that was a really cool connection. And of course, meeting Lydia over the years and tying that all together. My brother has a daughter named Lidia because of, and so yeah, it's the connection and the closeness that we've had with you guys has just been awesome. And look forward to many years in the future of being able to work with you guys. So like I said, Cody was not only gracious enough to invite us down, but he's also going to demo a couple products that they sourced from us today. So we're going to be doing a pork ossobuco shank, and what's the other product that we're going to be demoing?
The ribeye, the beef ribeye that you cut.
The ribeye that we got, which is a gigantic hunk of ribeye.
Yeah, that's.
You can
show
tell
people. Yeah, it's.
And so
it's a pretty large one.
If I remember the spread correctly, we're doing like a 24 to 26 ounce cut. Is that right?
Exactly.
Over 1.5 pounds of meat that's on a plate for you guys. And when they cook this steak and how they prepare it, it will be one of the best steaks that you've ever had in your life. On top of some of the best pork that you've ever had in your life. So
this really, with a product that's this good, you want to do as little as possible to it. So. And because we'll season at the end, and I'll show you how we do our special seasoning, we don't do anything at this point. It just goes directly onto the grill. And if you have a wood-fired grill at home, that's even better.
Mm-hmm.
Even better. So while this cooks, because it is just grilling a steak, and I have a feeling that your meat eaters there know how to grill a steak already.
Yeah, sure.
So what they might not know how to do is your heritage pork, like a pork shank. This is one
because that's a hard thing to cook.
Yeah, this is. I remember we were talking to Lidia in the beginning, and at the time we'd been doing veal ossobuco, and she said, and we talked about pork shanks, and she was like, "Oh, pork shank's a great cut. You can braise it, you can roast it, and those are very different things. If you roast it, the texture's more firm." But like the gelatinous qualities come out really well, and the flavor becomes very intense, and that's really, really delicious. But it's really best that moment after you roast it.
Right.
Let me just move my steak here. Just that exact moment that it cooks is best. But the a braised shank, like we do, just like you would do the traditional. Veal ossobuco from Milan. But one very important thing is you can see on this, it's been salted. It needs to be salted ideally overnight. Because when you think this is a really big piece of meat, and if you just put salt on the outside, it hasn't had time to absorb inside. And after you get the first bite or two off the outside, then the rest of it's kind of bland. Mm-hmm. So braising and pre-salting it allows you to really focus the flavors and make them really deep and delicious.
And the salting on the outside helps with your browning too, right?
Yes.
Because it gets some of the moisture pulled away from the outside and allows you to caramelize some of that on the outside as well, right?
And what we do, we actually we used to put a little flour on the outside. There's so many people who are sensitive to gluten that we've switched. We do a little bit of rice flour now, but you can leave it off too. It works either way. But it does add a little body to the sauce. But as you can see on these have been they've been salted, lightly floured, and I've browned them in this little pot, and I've taken the oil that was in there originally out because the oil at the browning stages generally isn't that delicious. So we discard that and then continue. So I'll put a little bit more oil in here so the vegetables don't scorch. And then we have our flavoring components. This is really straightforward for a braise. Onion, carrot, celery, porcini mushroom. This is kind of an Italian secret ingredient here that builds the umami flavors in the dish so much. Little fresh bay leaf, fresh rosemary, orange and lemon zest, and we'll use the juice from the orange as well.
Okay.
So these are just going to go, it's quite simple, straight into the pot. I'll give those just a minute or two to brown. And all of these steps, each one of them intensifies a little bit the flavor, adds a little more depth. But I'm going to rush this just a little bit so everyone's
Sure.
not here letting these vegetables do their thing. And the next thing that we do to this is I'll clear out a little spot here. We have a little tomato paste. I'm going to put that right into that little spot. And we'll let that begin to smash it down with the veg. We'll let that caramelize as well. So that will intensify and deepen the flavor of the tomato. Our steak is grilling away back here. I know from 20 whatever years of grilling this steak that if I want a nice medium rare on our grill, it's going to take 20 minutes. And we just do it simple, 5 minutes. We make hash marks at 5 minutes, turn it over 5 minutes, one more time 5 minutes, and it's a perfect medium rare.
Okay.
It just works out that way. So after the tomato paste caramelizes, we'll do the juice from this orange. That brightens it up a little bit, gives it a little more acidity. And we'll add a little white wine as well. So here's our white wine. And turn the heat up a little bit. This we're going to cook until the alcohol, the assertiveness of the alcohol is faded a little. The knobs on this stove work exactly the opposite of my stove at home. Then as the alcohol cooks out, we'll add some crushed tomato. And this can's probably just a normal grocery store size can would be good for home use.
Right.
Those don't make much sense in a restaurant.
Right.
Maybe just a little bit more. We'll tuck that in. And then we'll add liquid. You could use chicken stock, water. If you have a little pork stock, you could do that as well. Check on my steak here. Then you could either cook this in the oven, or you can, after adding the liquid, or just cover it and you can cook it on a stovetop. Works great. Then,
and what's your heat like when you're...
So when you're cooking on the stovetop, I would turn it down to just to a low simmer, so you have a few bubbles percolating. If you add a whole lot of liquid at once, it's almost like making soup, and that's a different thing. So yeah, just add liquid as necessary.
Treat it a little bit like a risotto, just little bits at a time.
So after about an hour and a half to 2 hours, sort of depends on the temperature, the speed. It should be very tender, the pork, not quite falling off of the bone yet. So here I have a shank that has braised, and you can see they shrink a little.
Yep. So that's about, you said about an hour and a half to 2 hours or so?
And then, so all of the vegetable and everything that I put in there, we take that out because a lot of the liquid is gone. We take the vegetable out and we put it through a food mill.
Okay.
So it goes through like this, and that gives your flavor and texture to the sauce.
Okay.
And You can do, if you're entertaining at home, you could do all of this up to this point. You could do it a day in advance, and just slowly reheat it, and that would make it very easy for entertaining or feeding your family on a busy day.
Sure.
So the traditional accompaniment that we do with this is risotto with barley. You could use farro, you could use different grains, but we like to use barley. And I'm starting with just a little mirepoix. Which that's already sizzled for a few minutes. Then I'm going to be adding, this is the barley. The barley has been cooked, par cooked ahead of time.
Okay.
We'll bring that up a little bit.
Which is the only way we can do it in a restaurant, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise-
But it makes perfect sense for if like I said, if you're entertaining at home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've got a little. This is a very mild chicken stock. You don't want everything to taste like chicken.
Sure.
But it is gets a little flavor. You could also use water. Water would work fine. We'll let that cook for a moment or two. Let me check back in on our steak here. Leave it. It's still holding onto the grill, so I know it's not ready to move yet.
So with the steak, there's a few there's, kind of two forms of flipping them versus leaving it alone and letting it sit. And so you like to let it roll. And
well, yeah, if it's, I just know that it hasn't released from the grill yet.
And that's your indication. As soon as
that sort of tells me,
if it's still sticky, it's not ready to move yet.
Exactly.
Okay.
So while the steak is cooking and while our barley is cooking, one thing that the seasoning for our steak, because the flavor is so wonderful, it's such a wonderful cut of meat. Our little Italian twist on it is a rub that we make that we put on after the steak is cooked.
Okay.
And so that is simply coarse sea salt. I've got, so let's see, this would be about a cup of coarse sea salt, maybe 5 or 6 anchovies. And I know there are people that say, oh, I hate fish or I hate anchovies. You never know that it's in here.
Yep.
Absolutely never know. And then a little fresh rosemary. And I've already chopped some of that. It just makes it a little easier. I'll put a little bit more. Makes it a little easier on the food processor. And there we go. Ronan. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh. Your power has no power, Ronan. There we go. Okay, I'll turn that back on now. So continuing. So this is chopping the rosemary some more, the anchovies, and we will add a little extra virgin olive oil.
And tell me why. Why are you adding olive oil in there?
It tastes good.
Yeah.
It makes it more of like a paste.
Okay.
And that's what we really want is something that sort of is, I couldn't give you an amount. You want it to be sort of like wet sand, and we're pretty much there.
Okay. Is that a lot for good distribution across?
Yeah, that helps spread it on the steak, but you also get, there's a lot of complex flavor in extra virgin olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also why we put it on after the steak is cooked, as opposed to before, because you get all that olive oil smell that everyone loves.
Mm-hmm.
When you cook with extra virgin olive oil, all that aroma goes up in smoke, and you lose the flavor. So this way, you get the most out of all the ingredients. You get the most out of the rosemary; it's still fresh. The most out of the anchovies, and the most out of the extra virgin oil.
Makes sense.
So back on our barley here. It's absorbed that liquid. It's beginning to expand a little bit. Since it's spring right now, I'm going to add I got some little asparagus tips and sugar snap and snow peas.
Okay.
You could add English peas. Depending on the time of year, you could add all kinds of things.
Sure. What are some of the other things that you guys add into your barley?
And during the winter, we use butternut squash, some of the fall vegetables. If you could even add like a fruit, like apples or pears could be good.
Oh,
in
okay.
this. But this. These are all very quick cooking vegetables. I just got the tips from the asparagus. I'll give it just a little bit more water to help it speed it up a little bit there. There we go. Now then the last step on this, it will need, it's already had salt and pepper. I seasoned the onion before and the carrots. The water is seasoned when you cook the barley, so it's not going to need any more. And besides, it's going to get a little cheese at the very end. And the cheese has some salt. So I've got cheese. Let's see how much of that we need. A little butter, some parsley. And I'm doing this off the heat. The cheese,
that's one thing I struggle with a lot is cheese on top of a stove. And you want it when you're incorporating your cheese, you want to get that away from the heat.
Yeah, because if the cheese gets too hot, then you separate into oily fat and stringy cheese protein. So if you do that gently off the heat, then you'll have a nice creamy combination there.
Gotcha.
Okay. There we've got our barley. And this is a shank that I had cooked before. It's actually sitting in finished sauce, so it doesn't need a whole lot more sauce on top of that. But we'll give it a little bit because that's so delicious.
It smells absolutely wonderful.
And then it's really so delicious. It doesn't need anything else. You know, in the restaurant, we put a little parsley on there.
Sure.
Another traditional garnish would be some sort of citrus like orange rind or lemon zest. You could even, some people do a little raw garlic. Sometimes I think that gets in the way. It's the flavor's too aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So there we have our finished shank. Could you give me a plate for the ribeye? Thank you. Let's see here. Where did I lose my tongue? So this ribeye. So it really doesn't need. First of all, it does need to rest. That's important because if you serve it right now, if you cut into it, it's tight. A lot of the juice will flow out. So we'll let it rest a little while. But I will take some of the rub here. Oh, let me get a pause for a second. Let me get a brush. So, little rub here with the, and it doesn't take very much.
I would imagine with the concentration of flavors, you don't need a whole lot.
And what you want to taste is the steak.
Yep.
So. And that really is enough salt. You could, if you were serving this to a group, you could slice it and you could salt it a little bit more at that point, just so it's inside. But really, there's quite a bit of seasoning just from the rub.
Sure.
So those are our two Paradise products. We have several others on the menu. We have the pork porterhouse, and then at different times of year we use different cuts. And we also use the shoulder to make our sausages, meatballs, things like that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think a lot of people don't know is how much you guys do from scratch, all the way down to breads and pastas, and that's always something that we always kind of, you know, brag on you guys about is there's so much that you guys do in house, like all the way down to your pastas.
Yes.
Like I've been down there, you know, dropping off stuff and seeing those guys roll that pastas out, and there's a lot of work that goes into
all day,
that.
every day. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's something that's super cool about you guys is the attention to detail. And I mean, you said it earlier, like using the ingredients that you do and trying to use those in a way that you get the most out of what they have to offer for each and every dish.
Exactly.
So from letting the protein be the star to just adding some little accentuations with a little bit of salt and olive oil and some rosemary, and really letting the food do the talking rather than trying to build.
Exactly. If you have great ingredients, they speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So you just give them a little nudge.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Cody, thank you so much.
Certainly.
These look absolutely amazing. Guys, if you haven't made it down here to Lidia's, they're down in the crossroads right behind Union Station. Come down here, see what this guy's doing back here in the kitchen, because he's working magic, and the stuff that they do is absolutely amazing. So if you haven't done it, get down here yet to try them out. And other than that, Cody, thank you again.
Certainly.
I
My
appreciate guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you stopping in, and we'll see you next time.